Hi everybody, and welcome to the video in my continuing series of various camera introductions. This is the Kodak Retina IIa Type 016. If you have a Retina 2A, there are different types of Retinas 2A, so this is specific to the 016. There might be similarities between other models, but if it's not a 016, this video may not be directly applicable to it. In a nutshell, saying that twice. But to find out what type of retina you have, you can find resources for that online. They're pretty good ones, and I'm not enough of a retina expert to be able to tell you what the differences are between a 015, a 016, a 020, things like that, or even if all of those are 2As or not. So at any rate, this is a one video introduction to this camera. And at the end, there are going to be some pictures that I've taken with this, so stick around for the end of the video and you can see some photos. So first off, general camera overview. This is a fixed lens folding camera. What that means is the lens that's on it is the lens that's always going to be on it. It's a 50mm f2 xenon lens, and it's a folding camera because the lens folds up inside the camera like that. It's, in my opinion, one of the most beautiful cameras I've ever seen. It's a gorgeous, gorgeous piece of machinery, and it is incredibly solid and well built. Has no meter, no battery, nothing to corrode or anything like that. It's a purely mechanical camera, a very, very good and reliable camera. It has one Achilles heel. There's a small spring that operates in this mechanism, in the shutter count mechanism, and if that spring breaks, the camera is non-functional, and those springs are nigh impossible to find. There are people who can repair these, but those springs are very difficult to come by. So at any rate, that's its only Achilles heel. So it has no meter. The shutter style in this is a leaf shutter. Now what that means is that the shutter, let's see if we can get a good light here. See those little leaves inside that lens? That's the shutter. And so I'm going to set this to, let's see, where's the setting? There it is. I'm going to set it to ½ a second. And you can see that the shutter opens very quickly and then closes again. And that's the shutter opening and closing. You could see the aperture behind it. But I had it pretty much wide open for this. So at any rate, that's the shutter. It has speeds of B, 1 second, and then the standard intervals up to 1/500th of a second. By 1951 standards, this model was released in 1951 and produced until 1950 something. This one was made in late September 1952. That's a very fast shutter, and it's also got basically no shake. It's one of the nicest shutters on any camera that I own, and of the leaf shutter cameras I own, I think it's probably the best shutter. Let's see. It has an off-center reverse telescopic viewfinder, which what that means is the center being where the lens is. This is where you're going to look through the viewfinder. This is the range finder. We'll get to that later in the video. And so it's off-center, and it's above the camera as well, which means that it's going to cause parallax at close distances. How close I couldn't say for sure, but probably anything less than about 12 feet is going to suffer from some parallax, and if you're trying to do close focusing, there's going to be extreme parallax there. Let's see. It's got an on-shutter focusing mechanism, meaning that the focusing ring is right here, built into the shutter. And you can see how when I change the focus, the lens moves in and out. At the same time, it's also controlling a mirror and the range finder housing, but again, we'll talk about that later in the video. It uses 135mm film, standard 35mm film as we call it now, and there were more than 100,000 of the Type 016 Retina 2As produced between 1951 and 1954, I think it was, 55, somewhere in that range. These sold for $170, give or take, when they were brand new. Doesn't sound like a lot of money today, but if you convert $1951 from $170 into its equivalent in 2012 dollars, this would be a $1,400 camera, making it nicer, equivalently nicer than the vast majority of digital SLRs on the market. It was a very high-end camera, very, very good optics. The optics on this today still cut mustard. I mean, they really are fantastic, fantastic pieces of glass on these, and the build quality is just amazing. I can't even put into words how great they are. At any rate, it has the finder magnification. The rangefinder has 0.7x magnification, meaning that it reduces the image size as it comes into the rangefinder. And like I said, this camera itself was made in late September 1952, so it has the second series shutter built into that. We'll talk about that again in just a minute. So before we go any further, I should probably tell you about my Kodak bias. I don't like Kodak cameras. I don't. I have a Brownie Hawkeye flash, which is a lot of fun to use. I'd never try to take serious photographs with it. Then I have this, and then I have a Retina IIa, and they're amazing, and I love them. And this camera is just a joy and a pleasure to use, and it's not like any Kodak ever made. In fact, there are two lines of cameras that Kodak made that are really nice. There are these Retinas, the old heavy Retinas from the 1950s. When you get into the 60s, the Retinas started getting pretty cheesy. And then there's the Medalist cameras, which also are very, very good. And that's it. In my opinion, Kodak cameras, other than that, were the contemporary equivalent of disposable cameras. And so if you want to ever see a whole bunch of really old, bad, beaten-up cameras, go to a flea market that has cameras, and you can probably find all kinds of Kodak folding and box cameras that basically should just be used for scrap because they have not held up well over time. These Retinas are an exception. They were built in the Nagel factory in Germany, entirely German-made cameras, extremely high-end. And they made them successfully for about 10 years before someone at Kodak realized they were making good cameras and had to stop. That's a bit sarcastic on my part, but I'm not a huge Kodak camera fan, at any rate. But these are great. They were produced from January 1951 was when the first Retina IIa Type 16 was produced until April 1954. That was when the last Retina IIa Type 16 was produced. From January 1951 until March 1951, these had Schneider-made Retina Xenon 50mm 1:2 lenses, or Rodenstock made 50mm 1:2 lenses, and they were called the Retina Xenon and the Retina Heligon, respectively. From March 1951 until the end of the production, they had the same glass, meaning the Schneider and the Rodenstock lenses, but they were built from the first 3 months they had Comper rapid shutters, and then after that they had Synchro Comper shutters. And you can see, maybe you can see right there, you can see it says Synchro Comper, indicating, so if you have one that says Comper rapid, it's from the first 2 months of production, and that's a very old and uncommon camera. So also, the Schneider version, which are the Xenon lenses like this one has, were made for America. So if you had a Retina Xenon lens, it was made by Schneider. If you have a Retina Heligon lens, it was made by Rodenstock. Both extremely good quality. You could probably find some pedants who would like to debate whether Rodenstock or Schneider were better, but you know what? They're both really darn good lenses either way. So before this, there were various Kodak Retina models. This was concurrent with various Kodak Retina models, and this was superseded by various Kodak Retina models. It was a very long production line with lots and lots of models in the camera family. And then following the 50s versions of the Kodak Retinas, there was a series of declining quality models in the 1960s. Kind of the way that goes with them. Okay, so what we're going to do, if you have a copy of the instruction booklet, go and grab it, and we're going to follow some of the instruction booklet through to talk about the different features of this camera, how to use it, and some of the inner workings of the Kodak Retina IIa. Alright, so if you have a copy of the manual, now would be a good time to open it. We're going to go through the features on top of the camera and what the various buttons and functions are. We're going to start here with the body shutter release. That's this right here. This activates the camera's shutter, but only when the front door is open. If the front door is closed, this button won't respond. Don't try to force it, but it won't activate the shutter. And that's important because when you load film into this camera, you don't want to have to open up the body if you don't have to. It's a good way to risk putting a fingerprint on the lens, or overextending the or extending the what's it called, the accordion in here a little bit too much. And so there's what's called the what is it? Body shutter release, film advance release, right behind the shutter release. So you can see I can't advance the film. If I take a picture, I can't advance the film. But if I've loaded film, I want to be able to advance it without opening up the camera. So I hit that button, and it allows me to advance the film. Now, it's very important to note that when you're advancing film, you want to do a smooth, even stroke the entire length that the arm will travel, because as I mentioned earlier, there's a spring in the counter mechanism that we'll look at in just a second, the counter, that if it breaks is almost impossible to find, and a very good way to destroy your camera. So don't jerk it through the advancement. The next thing we have is we did the film advance lever. Next we have the cable release socket, which is built into the shutter release on the body. Then we have the frame counter over here. Now this counts downward from 36 down to 0. When it hits 0, the camera locks up. So it's not automatically resetting either. Once you load film, there's a little clockwise arrow engraved at the bottom here. You would turn it to the number of exposures you have, and then it would count downward, and when it hits 0, it will stop. So if you put a 36 exposure cassette in, but only set it for 24, you're going to waste 12 frames. So for those of us who are used to having counters count upward and stop when the film runs out and automatically reset, this is a bit of a change for us, but it's by 1951 standards, that was pretty cutting edge, and also the way that most cameras worked. Now we also have up here the, accessory or cold shoe right here. And it's called a cold shoe because it's got no power running to it. There's no battery, so there's no way to power a flash off the cold shoe. I think there's a solenoid on the shutter to power old style flashes, but I don't have anything that hooks up to it, so I couldn't tell you whether it works or not. At any rate, so the cold shoe would have accessories. This has a rangefinder built in, so that wouldn't be necessary. But there were these old cable release shutter timers where the timer would be built into a mechanism here that would fit into the accessory shoe, and then the cable would go up and down into the cable shutter release. You set the timer, go walk and get together with your friends and family so you can have a group picture. The shutter winds down mechanically, trips the shutter release, and you're set. That was an old time way of doing that. You could also put things like a light meter up there that would help. But a lot of these, like the guy who I got this from, he had a pocket light meter, which is in one of my other videos as well, that works. They work as well very nicely. At any rate, then we also have the film rewind knob, and it's got a type reminder on it. So here's the film rewind knob, and once the film is done, you just rewind it this way. Not quite as fast as the cranks you're used to if you have an SLR, but it also has a type reminder. So there's a little arrow here pointed to infrared. I can just put my thumb on here and spin it, and now that little arrow is pointed towards +X. Kodachrome A, Kodachrome Daylight, and not a single one of those films is made anymore. So for practical purposes today, not the most useful feature of this camera. So here we have the front of the camera, and so what you'll notice right now is that the lens is open. So this is the inside. Well, let me show you first off the front of the camera. That's the front of the camera. Now that it's open, and we'll go through that in just a minute, we have the inside of the front of the camera. And inside we have the buttons to close the camera. So up here on top and down here on the bottom, there's a button, and you squeeze them, and then you can fold the camera shut, making sure to note that the focus must be set at infinity in order for this camera to close without damage. Some cameras will automatically refocus to infinity, like I have a Welta Welty that will do that. Yes, that's an actual camera name, I didn't just make those words up. But this one does not. It will put up some resistance if it's not at infinity, so make sure to put it to infinity first. It's not a repair that you want to have to pay for. Let's see, then we have the focus scale. The focus scale is right here, and need you later. Okay, so you can see there's numbers here. I'm going to change the focus, and those numbers, there's a black line on top of, you see that triangle right there? That points to a black line, which tells me what my focus is. So let's zoom this into the closest focus. Oops, wrong way. And let's try this. Now, you can see that black line's right about in the middle of your screen, and I'm set at about 50 feet. So I'm going to refocus now to 10 feet. There we go. And back again. So that's the focus scale. Oh, that's awful. And we'll get this whole thing back in focus. Okay. The nice thing about manual focus lenses is that as I'm changing the focus, there's no motor sound in the background of the video. Also takes a little while. Okay, now back to the inside front. That's where we were. Okay, we have the scale. We have the diaphragm lever right here. So I'm going to set this to bulb. So I'm going to open up the shutter, and you can see, oops, get that back on the screen. So you can see as I adjust the diaphragm lever, that's how the aperture functions. So going from f16 at the smallest to f2 at the largest. There we go. And you just push backward on it slightly, and put backwards isn't towards the back of the camera very gently, and then just slide it one way or the other, and then there's a spring that pushes it back into place, and that works as a locking mechanism. Now, it only locks at the full stop intervals, but that doesn't mean you can't leave it at f3.5 and take a picture. Ooh, don't like letting that thing slap back like that. Then let's see, we also have the shutter speed ring. So right here, there's a ring on the camera that turns, and that's going to be impossible for you to see on this video in all probability, but you'll have to trust me. And what it does is there are little letters on the top of the camera, B1, 2, 4, 8. These are the shutter speeds, and there's a red dot on this little ring that turns, and you just set the red dot where you want the shutter speed. So right now 1/50th. There you go, 50th of a second exposure. And these things being all mechanical, they're pretty reliable even today, the shutter speeds. We also have the, let's see, shutter speed setting lever. This camera actually doesn't have that. I think my manual is from a slightly different model, because this shutter does not need to be cocked like some old-time shutters do. And then we've got the flash socket down here. So we're going to close this. Now also, sorry about that, also on the front of the camera, this is with the front of the camera being closed, we have some things to show you. We have the camera lens door, which is right here, and this is the door that opens to reveal the camera lens. There's also the rangefinder sighting aperture right here. This is light comes in through here, goes straight through to the back of the camera. We'll see that in a minute. And then the rangefinder range aperture. This isn't actually labeled in the instruction manual. I had to go and look up kind of what it's called, and that might be the right term, range aperture. So the way that the rangefinder works is that light comes in through this window and this window at the same time. And so it comes in through the windows, and check this out. I'm actually going to do some drawings for you. Here's your rangefinder. This is your window on the left. This window corresponds to this line. And here's your other window. That's the smaller window. Okay? So the light comes in to both windows at the same time. Then it comes through here to your eyeball. And it comes in this window, bounces off a mirror over to here, bounces off a translucent, like a pellicle mirror. And what happens is that your eyeball actually sees two images at the same time. Now what happens with the retina, as you adjust the focusing scale on the camera lens, that's this right here, one of the mirrors inside of the body, I believe it's the one that's over here, so we'll go back here. The light comes in, hits this mirror. As you adjust it, this mirror's angle changes to change the way that the light reflects over here. And what that means is that you'll see two images, and the two images will merge into one. There'll be two faint images that will merge into one slightly less faint image. And when the two images are aligned, that's how you know that the image, the scene that you want to take a photo of is going to be in focus. So the back of the camera doesn't have a ton of really interesting stuff to see, but we should see a couple things. One is this is what you would look through. This is your rangefinder sighting aperture on the back, and you would look through this. This is where you will see the two images come together to know that you focused properly. And then the back, this is the film door. Over on this side here is the film door back catch. It's a lever you slightly pull down, and then it opens up the film door. We'll come back and take a look at the inside in just a moment. But beforehand, here's the bottom. And the bottom has basically the standard stuff that you would see on a modern-day SLR, but there's no battery cover because there's no battery for this camera. So we've got the film release that you would push down before you rewind the film, and a tripod bushing right there. This button is what you push to open up the camera door, front door, just like that. You push it down and then it opens. And when you close the camera by pushing down on these two buttons at the same time, you also push down on this button. It's not mandatory that you do that. Why isn't that closing all the way? Let's try that again. There it goes. It's not mandatory that you push down on this button, but I find it makes it easier to close. And I like to baby my cameras a little bit because I don't like to pay for them to be repaired, and I don't like damaging them. At any rate, so we're going to go back inside the camera. And basically, it looks like many of the cameras that we've seen in these video series. Film compartment over here. Second. These outlines are like a crutch. Film compartment over here. The film guide rails right here. And then both pairs, the ones that keep the film lined up properly and then the ones that help keep it flat. The film sprocket, the film roller, the film take-up spool. This is another film roller to apply the proper amount of tension. The film pressure plate that helps keep it flat on plane. But here you'll also see the lens is very close to the film plane. That's until we open the camera, and that brings the lens into alignment to keep everything nice and well focused. And you can see inside a little bit, you can see there's the accordion pleats up in the corner there. And as we close this, a little bit fast there. the accordion collapses as flat as it can for storage. That's the inside of the camera. Did I forget anything? I feel like I forgot something. Oh yeah. Also remember, when you have your camera open, don't touch the back of this lens because it is a piece of optic glass. You don't want to get your fingerprints on it, introduce any dirt. If you have to clean it, it's best to use a gentle blast of compressed air, making sure to clear the compressed air can of the frost that sometimes comes out of it before aiming it at the camera. Older optics, the coatings don't get along quite so well with modern cleaning solvents and cloths, so it's a good idea not to clean them that way. Strongly recommend not doing that, especially if the lens is still in really, really good shape. So now that we've seen how all of the features work, let's see how we would take an actual picture with the Kodak Retina IIa Type 16. Reaching around the tripod, that didn't sound good. Okay, so we're going to pop up the spool winder so we can get the cassette in. And the nice thing about this is a 135 was a standard film, back into the 30s, maybe earlier than that. And so these old cameras take standard film cassettes. So any film cassette you want to go into the grocery store and buy, or wind yourself or anything like that, will work just fine. So what I did was I put the film leader onto the take-up spool. I pushed this smaller button in back. Pushed the smaller button in back, and then it allowed me to advance the film without having to open the camera to take a complete exposure. And you can see how the film lines up, and there's not much space here. If you've seen some of my other videos, there's a lot more space between the cassette and the take-up spool. There's very, very little space here. You only have 1.5 frames that are going to be spoiled when you load the camera, which makes these a very efficient camera to use. You can get an extra frame out of your roll easily each time you load a roll. So I've loaded that roll. It's a 15 exposure roll, so I'm going to advance this to 15, 15, and I'm going to take one extra frame so that I'm advancing to fresh film. Now, I'm walking along and all that stuff. I finally see a picture I want to take, and so I open the camera. I'm going to look through the rangefinder here, and I'm going to adjust the focus. There we go, and it's not worth me trying to show you the rangefinder through here. It's just, it isn't, trust me. The image is way too small. So now we've got it in focus. We're going to set the shutter speed, which my light meter, which I have to carry separately, is going to tell me it's 1/100th of a second at f4. So we're going to set the aperture either. So 1/100th, I just did that off camera, I didn't mean to. Set the aperture to f4. Take the picture, advance, and now we're down to frame 13. So it's counting down. Now that I'm going to put this back at infinity, and now that I don't need to take a picture, I'm going to close the camera up and put it back in its case. If you have a case for this, they're relatively rare. The old original Retina IIa cases, I actually have one that came with this camera. It's in fairly decent shape. They're really, really rare. A lot of the Retina buyers didn't buy them thinking they weren't necessary, and now they're a collector's item. At any rate, so that's how you would take a picture with the camera. There's one other thing I wanted to go over. Thought, at least. Kind of backwards, snapshot. Oh yeah, I remember what it is. I'm going to go grab my macro lens, because for this next thing I need to show you up close on the lens how to do some things like hyperfocal distance settings, snapshot mode, and for that I need to really be able to focus on the lens. So we're going to come back in just a minute with the macro. Okay, so we've zoomed in here to the lens, and you can see maybe more clearly some of what I talked about earlier in terms of stuff going on this lens, like the red dot on the shutter control dial. So you can see here, I'll just refocus here, you can see the shutter speeds and how the red dot lines up with them. 1/50th, 1/25th. And you can see here the aperture settings. and how to change, faster, the aperture setting. So the first thing I'm going to show you is something called hyperfocal distance. Modern lenses do not have hyperfocal distance scales on them. So this might be a slightly foreign concept to you if you've never used an old lens. That's fine, nothing wrong with that. Hyperfocal distance is the relationship between aperture and focal distance vis-a-vis circle of confusion. I'm not going to go into any more detail with that in this video. It's a little bit outside the scope of the video, but basically the general principle is the smaller the aperture, the more in focus the image, the deeper the range of focus. So you'll see next to, you've got the triangle here, and this is your focal point, this line coming off the triangle. Right now I'm focused at infinity. Right now I'm focused at 15 feet. We'll leave it there for now. And so you can see next to this line, connecting with the 15-foot line, 2, 4, 5.6, 8, 11, 16. And what that means is if you're at f8, everything between this f8 and this f8 will be in focus. So at 15 feet, set at f8, everything from 50 feet down to 8 feet will be in focus, or in a reasonable approximation of focus. At f16, now I'm going to change this. Everything right now at f16 from infinity down to f5, 5 feet rather, is in focus. So that allows you to, if you're just walking down the street and you might want to take a quick snapshot, you can preset your hyperfocal range and take that shot, put your camera back down, and that applies for all cameras and all lenses. All lenses have a hyperfocal range. It's just that many of them aren't shown on the lenses anymore. So if you have any camera that has a scale somewhat like this, or any lens that has a scale like this, that's your hyperfocal scale. And I'm going to do another video specific to hyperfocal range in the near future. Then there's something else called snapshot mode. So we're going to set this back at 15 feet. So 15 feet, you see there's this little circle right here. If you set this at f8, let me get the numbers out because I want to make sure I quote this correctly. So this is the sort of f8 and be there rule. You know, you might have heard that before. What that means is f8 is typically the most universal setting. But in this case, if you set it at 15 feet at f8, you're going to be doing what's called far zone focusing, meaning everything from 15 feet to infinity is in focus. And that's separate from hyperfocal distance. Now, if you set it at 10 feet, which also has a circle next to it, and f8, that's near zone focusing. And everything from 7 to 15 feet is going to be in focus. And that actually shows up a little bit better on the hyperfocal scale than this. But snapshot mode, which is 10 and 15 feet at f8, is different from hyperfocaling. Let's see. The leaf shutter, oh yeah, I was going to mention, this, as I said, has a leaf shutter on it, and we saw how that works. One major advantage of a leaf shutter, let's get that in focus here. You can see it there, the little individual leaves on the shutter. One major advantage is that there's basically no camera shake with a leaf shutter. And that's why many large format cameras use leaf shutters, the 4x5 cameras and things like that. And so it is possible to hand hold this camera down to 1/125th of a second, or even slower if you have very steady hands, because the leaf shutter has such minimal shake to it. So that is the Kodak Retina IIa Type 016. So if you stick around for a minute, what we're going to do is I'm going to put up some pictures now after this that I've actually taken with this camera. So if this video was useful, oh, there's my thumb, it's so huge. Okay, give me a thumbs up if this video was useful. Also, you can subscribe to get more camera videos from me in the coming months and years if you'd like. And if you have any questions or comments, you can put a comment down there, and I'm pretty good about responding to them fairly quickly. Also, if you have any suggestions for things you would like to see in a video, please let me know, and I'd be more than happy if I have the technical knowledge and equipment to film a video about it for you. And now, here are some pictures.